So with this, let's get started with the section 3 or the third session of the Google Cloud Online course. So first of all, this is a very simple diagram where we need to understand what exactly is meant by a local compute workflow. So essentially over here, the user provides some input to a processor, and then the processor generates some output which is given back to the user. So the input happens by some input devices like a keyboard or a mouse, and the output happens by some output devices like a printer or a display or a monitor. So in a way, there is two-way communication which is established between a user and a processor, and essentially this is what is called a local compute workflow. And every other component inside a computer system is only present in order to facilitate this communication properly. So then let's look at what exactly is meant by a remote compute workflow. Okay, so a remote compute workflow is in a way similar to playing a game online. So you actually interact with a computer which is physically present in front of you, but the game which you play is happening somewhere on the cloud. So similarly, you provide input and output to the CPU which is present physically at your place. So this is a local compute workflow. After this, that particular CPU generates network requests or generates an HTTP request to an API. So this API further interacts with a computer present somewhere on the network. So this computer may be a lot powerful than what you are currently using in order to facilitate multiple connections to it. So at any given aspect, at any given time, there will be multiple CPUs being connected to a single computer on the network, and this will be facilitated by using an API. Okay, so essentially let's look at what are the benefits of remote compute. So first of all, what exactly is meant by remote compute? So remote means something which is present in the distant, and compute is a way of using computer power. So whenever you are using a computer which is present at a different location and you are using this computer through a network in some way or the other, this is when you are using a remote compute architecture. So the first aspect over here is scalability. So you can quickly get as many computers as you want by using a remote compute approach. Then you also have a layer of accountability. So whenever you create a new remote compute instance, that is when you have someone to blame when something goes wrong. Then you also have a very important aspect of redundancy, where you can be sure that suddenly, due to no reason, your remote compute instance will not be shut off. And this can happen on a computer which is present at your address, where suddenly there is a power spike or there is a network error and suddenly your computer is offline. But this will not happen if you have a remote compute instance, and then it is also cost effective. So now let's get back to Google Cloud and let's set up a new remote compute instance. Okay, so inside Google Cloud, right now we can create a new project. So let's create a new project, and if you want you can even delete the previous projects. So over here let's create a new project, and the name over here is Compute Engine Trial. Okay, so now let's click on create, and this will create a project called Compute Engine Trial. And after this project is created, we want to use a different tool in Google Cloud. So now let's switch to this project. So over here the project is still building, and so now let's switch to the project by clicking the project name. And now we want to use a new product in the Google Cloud offering. So let's click on the navigation menu, and over here until now we have used App Engine and we have deployed websites on App Engine. We have used App Engine for a variety of different tasks. We have hosted static websites. We have built APIs on top of App Engine. So now we will be using Compute Engine. So let's click on Compute Engine, and first it will take some time to enable Compute Engine. And over here we are also using a different aspect of computing, which is called virtualization. So until this is getting ready, let's get back and let's look at some disadvantages or problems of remote computing. So the very first problem of remote computing is that it has very long deployment cycles. So now over here we'll be creating a computer. Physically we will be getting access to an operating system which is present somewhere on the Google data center, and then we will be using this particular access to that particular computer and then running programs on it. So with this, for any program we have to deploy it and push it on Google Compute Engine. So the second problem is network latency, where essentially every program or every output which is generated from this particular compute engine. So if you look at this workflow, essentially this is what we are creating right now. So any output that is generated from this compute engine has to first of all go through the API, which is present through, and come to your local computer through the network, and then it can be visible to you. So sometimes this entire process can cause some delay. So that is one aspect of using compute engine. And then the third disadvantage is that we have a lot of network uncertainties. So looking back to the compute engine diagram, essentially we have a lot of different problems on the network from the server to your local machine. So sometimes getting the data takes time, sometimes setting the data for the server takes time, and essentially there are a lot of different uncertainties which can take place on a network. Okay, so with this we have looked at the advantages and disadvantages of a remote computing architecture. So after this we will be looking at a phenomena in computing called virtualization.